My company doesn't do any research in biology on its own. We research about the research, you could say. So we're looking at what labs, what startups, what corporations are doing what things, and where are the gaps that they need to fill in. And then basically trying to help them find one another. So most of our clients are corporations that have, that spend a lot on R&D, basically. That's kind of the definition of most of our clients. And we help them find, again, it might be a patent that they could license, it might be a startup that they can invest in. And so, by bringing these pieces together, we hope to accelerate that future. We have about 20 different services, and maybe a third of those are related to life sciences and biotech. So we see similar patterns in investment in space, or investment in IT, or an investment in robotics. So from that perspective, you can look at the typical challenges you find facing biotech, the things that most people would say funding or regulation or things like that. And there are really very, very similar situations in a lot of other ecosystems. So safety, for example, is a huge issue if you're developing satellites or rockets. So we look for those similarities and differences across ecosystems and basically see where something that has been learned in one might apply to solving a problem in another. One of the biggest threats to any type of innovation, biological or otherwise right now, is I think a strong and unfortunately growing anti-science bent. A lot of people have a lot of fears about where science is bringing them in their world. And we talk about the world, about innovation accelerating all the time. And for a lot of people, it's a lot to absorb in a lifetime. So I guess my biggest fear would be that those fears win out, and that a lot of the things that we think are really promising ways to solve health problems that we have, or solve environmental problems, or even just make our lives better, get shut down on ideological grounds that don't have a lot of basis in actual data. And we see that in GMOs, we see that in regenerative medicine. These are both technologies that really have a very strong positive track record, but there are really powerful and charismatic forces that oppose them on grounds that really are more about their philosophy of the world than about the, say, benefit to other people. I mean, I don't. I know that they also think that they're acting in people's best interest, but I think on balance you can look at why they do that and what they believe in, and it can be, there's a real threat that a lot of the things that science can do will be shut down because of apathy or fear. We've almost gotten used to hearing about big diseases being cured, going from being the end of the world. In some cases, literally, people feel like it's the apocalypse with AIDS or with Ebola or with SARS, or, every few years there is, the sort of end of the world disease that's kind of raging through. And we actually have a pretty good track record of keeping those things in check. So my hope and belief is that we'll continue to do that, and maybe some of the really big diseases that we are challenged by today will start to become manageable and even maybe cured. I think the same thing with environment. There are a lot of environmental issues that we think of just as intractable and people really feel hopeless about. And from global warming to deforestation to water use. And I don't think that policy mechanisms alone can solve that. I don't think that funding alone can solve that. I think that science has a huge role to play in solving those problems, and it's the most constructive way that we can solve almost any challenge we face. Winston Churchill joked that the English and the Americans are two countries separated by a common language, and I think that's kind of the same thing. We're two communities separated by a very big continent and a country that we share. DC and Silicon Valley are really similar in a lot of ways, in that we say, in Silicon Valley has kind of an insular sound to it. Inside the Beltway kind of has an insular sound to it. And because they're such vibrant communities, they don't tend to reach out as much as they should. There's enough going on internally that they don't talk to almost anybody outside. So I think you see similar distance between, say, New York and Los Angeles and SF and DC. And the way to solve it really is through more interaction. So I think we have to be explicit about that. It's a long way to fly. I just flew here yesterday, and I know. But I think we have to get together physically and have these types of interactions. And then those physical interactions need to lead to long-term collaborations and, ultimately, professional friendships and trust because we've done things together and we haven't done things separately or in parallel.